Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I would like to ask you all a very important question. Do you ever feel thankful to the simple machines that made your lives easier? We all use simple machines a lot in our daily lives, but do you know actually what a simple machine is? Today let's talk about the simple machines. My friend Sephora and I made a website on this, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, Sephora can't join for this video recording, so I'm explaining both of our parts. So let's get back to the topic. To go to our website, simply go to Google and in the search options paste this link. So this is our website on the simple machines. So what are simple machines? Simple machines form the basis of mechanical physics. All complex machines are actually made up of a number of simple machines working together in them. There are 6 types of simple machines, which are inclined plane, screw, wedge, lever, wheel and axle, and pulley. At first, let's know about the inclined plane. The inclined plane is a sloping surface where one end is higher than the other, which is used for raising heavy loads. Also, the ancient Egyptians used inclined planes to build pyramids by carrying heavy stones. Ramps are common examples of inclined planes. Different parts of the inclined plane. Inclined plane doesn't have any specific parts, but it consists of a sloping surface used for carrying heavy loads. The scientific principles of inclined plane is that the inclined plane follows the principle that a small force acting for a distance along a slope can do a large amount of work. When the slope is steeper, it has more mechanical advantage. The mechanical advantage of inclined plane is calculated by mechanical advantage equals to length of slope divided by the height of the inclined plane. The plane offers a mechanical advantage in that the force required to move an object up the incline is less than the weight being raised. Let's know how inclined plane works. So at first the inclined plane is placed between a high and low area, and then the load is pushed from up or down. Examples of inclined plane includes in front of our houses there are inclined planes to move the car or any vehicles from the road to the garage, wheelchair ramps, inclined planes for entering to or coming from an airplane, stairs, flyovers, etc. Now let's talk about screw. A screw is like an inclined plane wrapped around a pole. Screws can hold things together. They can be used to lift heavy objects and tighten things. Corkscrews, tabs, light bulbs, bottle caps all make the use of the concept of screws to work. Different parts of the screw includes the screw mainly consists of a cylindrical shaft with helical grooves or ridges called threads around the outside. The screw has mainly 3 parts, which is the body and the thread. The central line of the body is called the axis. The distance between the 2 adjacent crests of the thread is known as the pitch. The scientific principles of a screw. A screw converts a rotational motion to linear motion and a torque to a linear force. A screw can amplify force. A small torque on the shaft can exert a large axial force on the load. If the pitch is smaller, it can get greater mechanical advantages. The mechanical advantage of screw is equal to the circumference divided by the pitch. Also, the screws can function in many ways, which makes our lives easier. Screws can mainly be used for fastening things, which is done by the standard screw or nuts and bolts. The drill bits are screws which are used to make holes. A jack screw is used to lift heavy objects or car jack. Also, when we turn a screw, the input force is changed by the thread into an output force. The output force pulls the screw into the material. Friction between the thread and the material holds the screw in place. The mechanical advantage of using screw involves the spreading of the effort over a longer distance, thereby allowing heavy loads to overcome with a smaller amount of effort. Now let's know about wedge. A wedge is a simple machine consisting of 2 inclined planes forming a triangular-shaped tool that moves to apply force along the length of the sides. It's used to cut or split objects apart. Applying force on the thicker part of the wedge causes the spread of force along both of its sloping sides. This force causes the object to split apart, which creates mechanical advantages. It can be used to separate two objects or portions of an object, lift up an object, or hold an object in place. Axes and knives are also forms of wedges. Let's know about the different parts of the wedge. Wedge consists of two inclined planes joined together to form a pointed triangle. Wedge has one sharp edge. It has a straight, thick part at the bottom which is used to apply input force while breaking something. The scientific principles of wedge. Wedge follows the principle of an inclined plane where a small force acting along the slope can produce a larger force. So when we apply force in the thicker part of the wedge, the force then spreads on two inclined sides of the wedges. So the small force can be converted into a larger force by the two slope sides of the wedges. Wedges makes our lives easier in many ways. It can be used for splitting, lifting, tightening objects, changing the direction of the input force, using less force to carry load, or for securing a hammerhead and its handle, etc. Also, during the prehistoric times, wedges were used for splitting rocks. Modern cars, bullet trains, speedboats, and jets also use the concept of wedges, which makes our lives easier. All of these have wedge-shaped, sharp pointed noses that helps them to cut through air and water. In our daily lives, we use knives, forks, grating tools, etc., which are concepts of wedges. Let's know about the mechanical advantage of wedges. As the output force is always greater than the input force in a wedge, that's why the mechanical advantage of a wedge is always greater than 1. The mechanical advantage of wedge is equal to the slope length divided by the width. A longer and thinner wedge has a greater mechanical advantage than a shorter and wider wedge. Let's know how wedges works. So wedges can be used in different ways according to the objective of using it. Wedges can be used for splitting or separating the same thing into different parts by applying force on the thicker part of the wedge, which would cause the wedge to spread the effort in different areas and result in splitting the object. Also, wedges can be used for carrying an object with heavy loads. It's mainly done using forklift, which has wedges in front. Wedges can even be used to stop an object from moving. Securing a wedge tightly under an object can help to prevent the object from moving. Some examples of wedges in our daily lives can include knives, forks, cheese grater, scissors, pin, pencil, sharpener, axe, etc. Now let's talk about lever. The lever is made up of a straight inflexible object like a board or a bar, which pivots on a turning point called a fulcrum. It helps to move a smaller force a longer distance in order to lift a load a short distance. When the effort arm is longer than the load arm, it provides a greater mechanical advantage. Examples of levers can include a seesaw, pliers, crowbars, tweezers, etc. The scientific principle of the lever is load multiplied by length of load arm is equal to the effort multiplied by the length of the effort arm. The mechanical advantage of lever is load divided by effort is equal to the length of effort arm divided by the length of the load arm. Let's know about the different parts of the lever. Lever includes different parts like load arm, effort arm, fulcrum, and beam. Levers can be classified into 3 different types based on the position of the fulcrum. Let's first talk about the first-class lever. The first-class lever has a fulcrum which is located between the effort and the load. The effort and load moves in the opposite direction. Teeter-totter, car jacks, crowbars, etc. are examples of first-class lever. The principles of Class 1 lever. When the fulcrum is closer to the effort, the more effort is needed to move the load in a greater distance. If the fulcrum is closer to the load, then less effort is needed to move the load a shorter distance. When the fulcrum is midway between the load and the effort, there is no change in force or distance or speed. So, From here, we can understand that the mechanical advantage is more if the load is closer to the fulcrum. The effort required can reduce. Let's know how the Class 1 lever works. So Class 1 levers can lift objects easily and utilize forces. When force is applied on the effort, the resistance arm moves up. Examples can include opening something tight with crowbars, lifting weight like a seesaw, teeter-totter, a car jack, or cutting something with scissors, etc. Class 2 lever. The load is in between the effort and fulcrum. The fulcrum is usually closer to the load, which provides a gain in force. Examples can include wheelbarrow, bottle opener, nutcracker, etc. Let's know about the scientific principles of Class 2 lever. So a Class 2 lever has the load between the fulcrum and the effort. As the load and effort are on the same side, they move in the same direction. Class 2 levers are used to make it easier to move the load. As the fulcrum is closer to the load, Class 2 levers makes it easier to move the load. This provides a greater mechanical advantage because the effort arm is longer than the load arm, so less force applied on the effort arm is converted into more force to lift the load easily. Let's know how it works. Class 2 levers makes it easier to move the load. A wheelbarrow, stapler, nail clippers, a brake pedal, or a nutcracker can be examples of Class 2 lever. Class 3 lever. So in Class 3 lever, the effort is in between the load and the fulcrum. Examples can include a pair of tweezers, hammer, using our hand to lift something are examples of third class lever. The scientific principles of third class lever. In this lever, more force is needed as the fulcrum is closer to the effort, but the speed increases because more force is applied. The torque also goes in the same direction. Friction with the fulcrum plays an important role in the lever. The mechanical advantage of a third class lever is always less than 1. Let's know how the Class 3 lever works. So the input force or the effort is higher than the load. However, the distance moved by the load is greater than the distance moved by the effort. In Class 3 Class 3 levers are used to make the load move faster. The longer load arm helps in increasing the speed. Examples can include a human arm, tweezers and the jaw, fishing rod, hockey stick, hammer, etc. Now let's talk about the wheel and axle. The wheel and axle is a simple machine which consists of a large wheel connected to a smaller wheel called the axle. It's used to lift items and move objects or people. Different parts of the wheel and axle. It has mainly two parts, which is the wheel, which is a larger rounded part on the outside, and the axle, which is a smaller rounded cylindrical rod on the inside. The axle runs through the center of the wheel and can be attached to another object. Let's know about the scientific principles of the wheel and axle. The wheel and axle follows the principle that a small force applied to the rim of a wheel will exert a larger force on the object attached to the axle. The mechanical advantage of the wheel and axle is the ratio of the radius of the wheel to that of the axle. So, how do wheel and axle function, or how do it make our lives easier? Wheel and axle helps in lifting heavy stones, moving people quickly, and moving parts of a complex machine. There are two basic ways of using wheel and axle in machines, which is a machine where the force is applied to the axle and a machine where the force is applied to the wheel. A wheel and axle helps to reduce the friction involved in moving an object, making it easier to transport. The object is placed on the wheel, which rotates around an axle, rolling over the surface and minimizing friction. Let's talk about the examples in our daily lives. Applying a large force to the axle makes the wheel go faster. Examples of this type of wheel and axle can include bicycle, car tires, Ferris wheel, electric fan, analog clock, winch, etc. Also, when we apply a small force to the wheel, it travels a longer distance and creates stronger force on the axle. Some other types of examples of this type of wheel and axle can include screwdriver, drill, windmill, water wheel, doorknob, pizza cutter, skating boots, etc. Now let's talk about the last machine, which is the pulley. So a pulley is a type of simple machine consisting of a wheel with a groove in it and a rope. One end of the rope stays inside the groove and the other end goes around the load. Different parts of the pulley. So a pulley mainly consists of two parts, which is a wheel which has a groove in it and a belt or rope that runs inside the groove of the wheel. In a simple pulley, on one end of the rope or belt is a load, and on the other end is free to apply force. There are some key words to know pulley, like groove, which is a long narrow cut made in a surface, a hinge, which is a joint that holds two parts together so that one can swing relative to the other, pivot, which is a pin or the center on which something balances or turns. Input force is the force applied by the person doing the work. Output force is the force at the point of the load. Different types of pulley. Pulleys can be of three main types, which is fixed pulley, movable pulley, compound or block and tackle pulley. So the scientific principle of pulley is when one end of the rope is pulled downwards, the load on the other end of the rope is pulled upwards. Therefore, the direction of force is changed from downwards to upwards. A fixed pulley changes the direction of the force on a rope or belt that moves along its circumference. A movable pulley changes the amount of force. A compound pulley is a combination of a simple and movable pulley which is designed to make the effort less than half the weight of the load. The mechanical advantage of the pulley can be identified through the number of ropes, and the rope that goes around the load shouldn't be counted. To calculate the effort required to lift the load, we divide the load by the number of ropes. And over here as well, we shouldn't count the rope that goes to the effort. To calculate the load, we multiply the effort with the number of ropes. Here we don't count the rope that goes through the effort as well. Let's know about the functions of pulleys. Pulleys are mainly used for lifting heavy weights. Lifting load using pulley is easier than lifting it using our hands. It also changes the direction of the amount of force. Some examples of pulleys is a crane uses a pulley to lift heavy loads. An elevator uses a pulley to lift people. It uses a counterweight on the other end to do this. Examples of movable pulleys include construction cranes, modern elevators, and some types of weight-lifting machine in the gym, etc. Example of pulleys can include a cargo lift system. Flagpoles use pulleys in order to hoist the flag up or to bring it down. We pull the string on the pulley and the flag runs up or down the pole. Sails on sailboats are raised and lowered using pulleys. Garage doors raise and lower utilizing the pulley system. Timing belts in cars are examples of pulleys as well. Escalators utilize a pulley system to function. And in all of these examples, a cable system works in order to make the lifting easier or to make moving items easier. Pulleys are essential to being able to move and lift heavy or large items. The simple principle behind the pulley makes this one of the most efficient and effective tools in existence. So thank you friends. I hope that you liked this video and this video is helpful for you. Please like, subscribe and share this video with your friends and family. Thank you. Bye bye.